Let's get good. I am the gamer under development, and this is GFW Academy's Movecraft 102. On the last episode of Movecraft, we went over a basic tutorial on creating a 10-punch in the corner. We added a couple custom frames to give it a little bit of a heel twist. That tutorial, once again, is credited to Dakota K of the Mod Pack and FirePro 2 community. FirePro 2, once again, if you guys don't know, is firepro2.com, the hottest community for Fire Pro Wrestling on the internets. Totally shameless plug there, guys. That being said, today we're going to look at basic splicing and just some of the other stuff you can do to help make you moves. We're going to start, though, by going to the config section right here, because there's some really cool tools in here. Now, a lot of these settings are innocuous, right? Number of loops. The value determines how many times an animation is looped and may be set from 0 to 10. So I believe this is how many times it will play a loop that is present in a move, which we can check out with the TCB when we get to that. Fall time is set the animation fall frame. I'm not actually sure what this is for. Like, that description isn't very clear, and the wording and terminology is not necessarily clear either in all instances. So what this may do is it may set when the pinfall is, if there is a pinfall frame. I'm not entirely sure because I haven't built a pinfall yet. So then we have the repeat wait here, which is the amount of time between animation loops, I suppose. That's what it says. It's the buffer. That's also not very explanatory. These things aren't super important for what we'll be doing today anyway, though. These are, we can change our viewport here. We can go ahead and say that we feel like we want this to be more in the center. Well, we can go -100 here, and that puts these guys a little bit more center. I don't think this actually affects your move at all. It just affects the viewport that you're working with. Now, on the other hand, if you go to ring display, I'm not sure, but this may actually alter the move. It may not. It may just be moving the ring, so if you wanted to be center of the ring, you can move them to center of the ring. Definitely something to play with there. Honestly, I don't use those that much. There's a grid display here, which can be really, really nice for positioning. I'm going to leave that off, though, because we don't really need it. Shadows we do want on. Shadows are very, very important because shadows are part of your positioning. The reason for that is the way that the game camera works is that it tries to keep both wrestlers' shadows within the frame. So if you don't keep an eye on your shadows, what can end up happening is the camera will actually follow the shadow, and if you move the actual wrestler animation askew from the shadow, it'll create like sliding, and it looks really, really weird. So if you have a move that looks like it's sliding at points, that's because the shadows are out of alignment, and I'm going to show you guys how to fix that today too. Okay, ring display, I'm going to turn that off. Obviously, very simple thing. I honestly just like the blue background. I feel like it's a much cleaner palette to work in. There are still a few other things we might want to play with here, like the zoom display. I'm actually going to zoom us to 90 because I prefer it to be zoomed out just a little bit more. And honestly, I think I might change our viewport to maybe that. And then maybe, let's go a little positive there. Okay, so now we have like a much more centered viewport. I kind of like that. Yeah, that looks better. Then we have the attacking wrestler's gender. You can switch these so that you can see the different models in them. Except it doesn't seem to... Oh, there we go. It takes a second to load if you do that. I hadn't actually played with that before. But that'll let you work with the different female body size if that's what you want to do. You can add partners in for tag teams. This affects their gender. I'm not entirely... Toggle marker for selected part on and off. Oh, that is actually interesting. I wonder how well that works. So if we were to do that... Okay, that actually is not helpful at all. So what that one will do is it'll actually make it so that you cannot select parts and move them on their own, it seems. Oh, wait a minute, or I wasn't on the one that I was selecting because I was trying to select the defender. Okay, so let's try this again with that off, because I haven't, like I said, a lot of these I don't necessarily play with all that much. Oh, that's nice. That's actually really, really nice. It is kind of weird here, though, because as you can see, when we right-click this, we're actually getting the upper arm, so I think you do need that on. My hope was that maybe if you turn that off, you can just get whatever you're over, because sometimes the selections aren't perfect. Like, right here is how we get that forearm. So we're going to leave that on, because we do actually need that quite a lot. The adjust wrestler thing, toggle option to darken unselected wrestlers, so that lets you know which one you're actually active in. We're in the attacker's frames right here. The other one that's really nice here is adjust flag frame, and that is going to make it so that your edit or the opponent's edit flashes red when the damage frame exists on that particular frame. So if we play it now, watch this. When he makes the impact, that's when we see that red flash. That's because that's the frame that damage is applied on. So that's actually really, really nice. And then there is toggle dummy wrestler display for hit detection. Oh, okay, so that's specifically for like strikes and stuff where you'll be painting a hitbox. I actually haven't done too much with them, so I'm not going to go over strikes specifically today. And then you can display ring lines. This is specifically for when you're doing a multi-angle move, and you need to see how it's going to look on those different angled axes. So we're going to leave that off because we're not going to be working on that. You can change voice lines and stuff here too, but the main thing I wanted was just to get this kind of nice. Oh, and look at that. So let's try moving that back. Still not quite right. I'm going to go maybe -20. Okay, that looks pretty good. So we're not going to be working on this move right here. What I was doing here was building an Orton Stomp. This is one of the things that I built that's kind of cool. So this is the Oath Pose taunt, only I made a custom frame or 3. And what you can see happens is I've added in a microphone. Now when he pulls his hand in, I've adjusted this too, so he's still got his microphone. And this is, once again, just the Oath Pose taunt. That's the taunt where he like puts his hand on his chest and talks. And I've just repositioned the hand, changed the actual hand, and given him a microphone. And we can go over that later as well. But first, what I want to do is I want to show you guys a basic splice, right? So we have a wrestler in GFW that wants to use a move called the Plot Twist. Currently, the Plot Twist is just Matt Hardy's Twist of Fate. We're going to change that. We're going to make it a little bit more unique than that. And the way that we're going to do that is we're going to come in here, and we are going to find the Twist Cutter. There we go, that is the Twist of Fate right there. And then we're also going to find the Stone Cold Stunner. Now, this is going to be a very, very simple splice. You can do this very easily, even as a brand new user to Movecraft. The first thing we're going to do here, though, is we're going to take the stunner, we're going to rename it. And the reason we're doing this is because if we do this, then what happens is we actually keep all of the move damage and things that were assigned to the stunner. So if I go into status right here, you can see that we have kept that it is power, it is cutter, it uses power and agility as its attack parameters, it uses agility and agility as its defense parameters, it can crit on finisher. So basically we just kept all of the nice things that were already present on the stunner. It does look like we didn't keep the stamina damage though, because it oh wait, yeah we did. Weird. Oh, that's self-damage. Okay, so we also kept all the damage and stuff. It just saves us time going in to actually set those ourselves. Now, the other thing we want to do is we want to make sure that we save this, and you want to save it with the exact same name as the move. So we're going to go Plot Twist here. Bam. Okay, so we have effectively saved the Plot Twist, and currently we know that the Plot Twist has all of the frames from the stunner in it. Now, that's not super important here, and the reason for that is because we're probably going to dumpster a majority of these frames anyway. But we want the move to start like a Twist of Fate. So we're going to jump over here to our Twist Cutter. We'll play this animation real quick. And what we're looking for is the frame where it makes the most sense to actually switch to the stunner. So I think it's that one right there. Because that looks like it could go into a stunner, right? We could go here too, but then we've got to kind of improvise that switch into the stunner position. This one is perfect. It's right where the stunner position starts. So we're going to go ahead and copy frame 15 all the way up to frame 1. We will go ahead and copy those frames. We're going to jump over to the Plot Twist, and just right here in the beginning, we're going to paste those. Now, if we play this, we're going to see things have changed a little bit. Oh boy, everything looks all messed up now, right? Like very, very messed up on this stunner. That's okay. That's exactly what we expected to happen. It's really not a big deal. So what we're going to do is we're going to come back to our Twist Cutter. We need to copy 15 frames again. And then once we have 15 frames selected, we're going to go to our Defender frames, and we're going to copy those. We're going to jump back over to our Plot Twist here. We're going to make sure that we're on the Defender, and we're going to go to frame 1 and paste. And now, we have the beginning of the Twist Cutter, and then we have a really, really rough, messed up ending to the stunner, right? So that's fine. Seems a little bad right now, I get that. What we're going to do here is we're going to go ahead and delete the Twist Cutter from here. We're going to load up the stunner again. And we're going to look for the frame, excuse me, we're going to look for the frame where we want to start the drop of the stunner. So if you look at that, that one looks almost identical to where we're ending on the Plot Twist on frame 15. So this is the frame we're trying to stitch together. We're starting here, and we want to kind of go right there. Or even right there, actually. Yeah, I think we want to go right here. So we want to start here and get the rest of the stunner frames. So we're just going to copy down to the bottom, which is 20. Go ahead and copy here. Jump over to the plot twist, and we're going to find frame 15 because we know that that is the last frame of the twist cutter that we want. We're going to click on 16 and then paste. And now, if we just turn our defender off here, kick, throws the arm out, stunner. Looks good, right? We can see where our damage frame is. Looking smooth as butter right there. Just a simple, simple splice. Absolutely nothing difficult about what we're doing here. Now the catch, though, is that we need to go back to the stunner. We need to find that frame where we decided to start, which I believe was 9, yeah? Yeah, it was 9. And then we need to make sure that we copy 9 to the end again, and this time we need to go get our defender frames. So we got that copied, we'll switch over to our defender. Go ahead and copy here, come down to the plot twist. We know that frame 15 is where we want to be pasting, or right after frame 15, so right here. And you can see where it goes out of alignment too. That's a good hint that that's where you want to paste. And now if we do this, well, that looks pretty good, minus the fact that our defender seems to have teleported out of the stunner. That's not good. We don't like that, right? That's kind of a problem. Like, we really don't want our defender to be just outside of the grip. So what we're going to do is we're going to actually move the position of the attacker when we get to that stunner. So let's see where it goes out of alignment. It's right here. Now you can see we're out of alignment. This isn't good. But our shadow is centered under us, which is perfect. That's very important. As long as our shadow is centered under us, then we can just adjust the RX and RY values. If our shadow is not centered underneath us, then what we need to use is these F values, but we'll get into that later when I show you guys the dissection stomp. So let's go ahead and just make some simple adjustments here. I think it's literally just like -4. No, a little bit more. It's like -8, 9. If we actually go to the stunner and find the frame where he's cinching that up, we can see the positioning that the stunner wants us to have here. And you can look and say, okay, his chin is just barely poking out from behind his arm. So let's check that frame here now. It's actually a little bit too far forward here still. So what we want to do is we want to actually go back a little bit more, or forward a little bit more, just like that. That's perfect. Looks like a perfect positioning. Let's go ahead and play our stunner or our plot twist and see how that looks. Beautiful. As simple as that, guys. The simplest type of move splice you can do. It still looks great. It's still a nice variation on the maneuver. Obviously, if you wanted to, you could go in and make custom frames to try to make the transition even smoother. But for this move right here, it seems perfect already. Like, I think this is totally acceptable quality. Nothing is slidey, nothing is teleporty, everything just looks good. So now what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and overwrite our plot twist. And then what we can do is we can run the checker and go ahead and try this out at ringside. Once again, I'm going to have to remember what the keys are on the keyboard because I don't have a controller plugged in, so this should be interesting. Fight! All right, come here, you. Yeah, that didn't work out too great. Gonna punch him. That's not what I want. There we go. Looks good. Looks good. I don't know what the pin key is, or I would pin him here. Yeah. Still, looks great, right? Boom. Perfect. That's exactly what we want. Okay, so we'll end our ringside check here. You can go ahead and register the move now, upload it to the workshop, whatever you want to do. You're all set to go. I'm not going to do any of that for the moment. I'm just going to overwrite again to make sure that I've got it saved, and then back out. Now we're going to look at some other moves that are a little bit more complex. You can do tons of those simple splices, by the way. Like, there's just quite a few moves that work really well with that. So, like, if I were to come in here, for example, I'll show you another simple splice that I've done. If we go to, I want to say front grapple big kick. There is a kick combination in here that works perfectly for combining with, where is it? Come on. It's not the cyber knee lifts, not the cyber auto kicks. Once I find it, it'll be very, very clear how it works, like, perfectly for what we're doing with it. And this is actually, I'm basically showing you guys how I was able to make the Johnson special that we use on GFW. Sorry, it takes me a second sometimes. My brain is a little slow in the morning. So it's not the machine gun facelift, or knee to face. Rapid auto kicks is not it. Where is it? Rounding middle kick is not it. It's like a combination of kicks to the face once they're, like, rolled over. Step kicks, there we go. Okay, so step kicks right here is another great example, right? So step kicks, you have them in this position already. They're right here. Boom, 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 boom. Last kick. And then the one you can combine that with, and I'm trying to remember if it's in here. I think it is the... It's not the flying cross arm breaker. There's another arm breaker that rolls right off of that position. That's... Here it is. The roll... There we go. Perfect, right? So you can see they start at almost the exact same position. Boom, boom, boom. Stop at that kick. Maybe right here where you're still holding the head. And then you add on that mount roll to armbar. And that is how the Johnson Special that's used in GFW is made. So you can make some really, really cool stuff just by doing simple splices like this. Now, something that is a little more complex is our taking care of business here that I've been working on. The taking care of business is the Dragon Sleeper variant that the Undertaker used to use back in his biker days. So we start with a regular Dragon Sleeper, and then there's some custom frames here that are used to lift the opponent off the ground into the standing position. And then as he wrenches, there is a loop here. So loops are interesting because you have to define a start frame and then a loop frame. That's what we've done here. Now, I believe with our loop settings, this loop should play 3 times when we animate it, right? So let's see. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, so it's 1 plus 3. And it might be because I already have the first choke there animated. I can't say for sure. Let's find out. So we get them to the standing position. No, it's literally 1 plus whatever number of loops you suggest. Okay, so anyways, looking back at this, we have a nice smooth lift here. Nice smooth choke. If you look at the actual loop, all he's doing is arching his back, which causes the guy's arms to go out. His foot shakes a little bit because he's being choked and he's, you know, struggling. And then as we leave that, you can see that he's kind of yelling at the crowd. I've changed the face here a little bit so he yells at the crowd. And also we've changed the hand positioning ever so slightly. He's cradling the opponent's back with his left arm and he's got his right arm on their stomach. And that is because the release for this, as you can see, is going to be tossing the opponent to the ground. Now, I haven't actually finished this animation. We can work on finishing this, but before we do, I want to show you guys how I've pasted together some stuff for the Orton Stomp. Now, a lot of this is just custom frames, right? A lot of this is customized frames. It's also important to think about it this way too. Like if you're making a move specifically for a real life wrestler, then you really should watch them do the move, like have it up in another window while you're working or alternate over to it and really watch their positioning and put the time in to do custom frames. That's why this one has taken me so long. This is actually based off of the Dragon Sleeper that Deadman applied to Tajiri. There's a bunch of clips of that on YouTube. And I think he even had the green mist in his face when he did it. That's the one I'm using. Anyways, this is just meant to kind of show that struggle as he like cinches it in. It's actually just a beautiful Dragon Sleeper. I've always loved it. I was actually disappointed when he stopped using it. Anyways, I'll get back to finishing this at some point, but right now is not the priority. One thing I will say about submissions, you want to make sure your damage frame is inside of the loop so that the damage is applied every time the loop plays. Okay, so that is that. Let's take a look at the dissection stomp English is hard, guys. Real quick here. So basically what I've done here is we have a stomp to the face, right? Only you can see that that stomps from a different direction. And we have a stomp to the arm here that is from face down. And you can see the positioning is ever so slightly different. So what I did was I actually kept the defender's frames from stomping face, and I'll actually show you guys how I've done this here. We do want to keep Jackknife Hold. I think I'll get rid of this. I don't know if I've saved it, though. Let's find out. Let's go delete custom data. We did save talk to the crowd. I'm going to make sure that I overwrite this before I delete it so we can clear a slot. And then we'll delete it. And what we're going to do is we're going to start fresh with a stomp on the ground, and I'll show you guys how I've constructed that kind of piece by piece. That is the wrong position. Let's get rid of front grapple there. There we go. And what we want is stomping face. Okay. So stomping face here looks good. Not what we're really after, though. I'm going to go to stomping arm instead. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to grab the attacker frames from this that go up to the point that I want. So let's see. We want to check right here. Bam. So right about there to right there. Or can we just copy all of them? I think we can just copy all of them. Let's do that. Let's copy all of these frames. You can also use Control-C, Control-V, but I use the right-click menu because it feels a little bit more deliberate to me. And then we'll just start here at frame 1. We'll paste this in. As you can see, we have a problem. We're nowhere near where we want to be, and everything just looks kind of wonky. What happened? I don't even think we got all the frames there. Hold on, let's try this again. Let's go to Stomping Arm here and make sure that we get all the frames, because I don't think we got all of them there, because that looked nothing like the correct move. Go back into Stomping Face, start at 1, paste. There we go, that's much better. But as you can see, we still have a problem. Right now we're stomping the mat, which, I mean, you know, maybe we're just exposing the business a little too much here. So you can do a couple things here. You could move the positioning if you wanted, but I actually like the motion of this stomp because that looks more like the way that Orton does the stomps to each of the limbs. So the real problem here is just our kick, right? It's where the stomp comes down, and we want it to come down and hit him in the face, and that's not happening. Instead, what's happening is... What the... Okay, that's what's wrong. So we want to start with our damage frame here. This needs to be impacting his face, and what we're going to do is we're just going to start moving the related parts to this move being right, which in this case is the calf and the foot. They're in the wrong place. We want them to be right about here, like he's stomping on his face. Now, as you can see, that's going to create some issues. The thigh right here is not the right thigh for this type of stomp position. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on that thigh piece and hit X and go in here and see if I can find a more appropriate thigh. This one looks like probably a better thigh to use. We're going to want to reposition it a little bit. So it's going to be kind of like that. Now we may also have a bit of a problem here with our leg. The leg may be a little bit... I don't think we can actually shorten the leg. So that's an interesting conundrum here. And I can't remember what part I actually changed to make that work. Or maybe I just repositioned it a little like that. So I think we can kind of go like that. I mean, we could also rotate this up a little bit more. There we go. That's a good way to fix that problem. And we'll position that right there. And as you can see, our stomp already looks better, right? We're now stomping on the face. This shoe could probably be a little bit better. I mean, it's not terrible right there, but it is kind of squished into his face. And I'm actually not sure that I want that shoe. I think I want a shoe where the toe is out more a little bit. So maybe something like... The bent toe shoes are actually the hardest things, in my opinion, to pick out. But I think I'll go for this one. And then reposition that. That looks better to me. Yeah. So now it looks like we're just stomping him square on the face. Boom! There we go. Now this will look a lot better on its own. We'll have to mess with the frames afterwards a little. Actually, no, we won't. They just look like we're stepping down after the stomp, which is perfect. Okay, so already this looks better. We're stomping him directly in the face. Kind of perfect. It's exactly what we want. So now we have the problem of how do we get to the next stomp, right? Because now we need to go stomp this arm over here, then this leg, then this leg, then this arm. So how do we get to the next arm? Well, we need frames that get us from one point to the other. So what I've done is found the Jackknife Hold here. And if you take a look at the Jackknife Hold, did you see that right there? Ever so briefly. We have some transitioning frames. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab these two frames. And actually what I did to make this easier is I clicked on this frame that I knew that I wanted. I went over here and I registered that frame so it stores it on that one slot for me. And then I went to this next transition frame and stored it on the 2 slot for me. And the reason for that is because now I can easily apply those just by clicking over there. So we're going to go back to our new stomping to face. Boom. Boom. God, I love that. Looks good. Looks great, guys. So right here, this S right here signifies this is when the 2 wrestlers separate, so we actually don't care about that. Right here is the last frame that we want to be using. So on this frame, I'm going to click, and I'm going to apply that preset. And there's some problems, which you can already see. Where's our shadow? Where's our wrestler? That's a problem. Let's go over here, apply our preset again. Where's our wrestler? Where's our shadow? That's a problem. So I'm going to go ahead and take our defender, And as you can see, this goes to 12 frames, as does this. Wait a minute, how do we... Really? Oh, it's because we pasted over those frames. Okay, that's perfect. That's actually perfect. So what we'll do is, we'll go right here, we'll turn off our defender, and we'll fix our first problem, which is that we're not lined up on our shadow, so this is going to slide really badly when we actually animate it. And what we need to do is switch to FX, which you can do by clicking this little yellow arrow, and then reposition within that shadow. The goal is to get kind of centered within that shadow, and if you're really having trouble or you want to be super, super accurate with it, what you can do is you can line your shadow up on the center line here. So that seems about perfect right there. And now what we need to do is use our F positioning here to line our edit up on that center line as well. So if we put the FX at 0, that seems pretty well lined up, and then we have the FZ to deal with. This is going to be a little bit more complicated. Because of the foot positioning, we kind of need to eyeball it a little bit here and try to make it look how we think is kind of right. I think we're pretty centered on our shadow right there. Let's see. It's actually one of those things where you tune it with testing a lot, to be honest, but it is a good start to just kind of get this to where we think we like it. I feel like that's pretty good right there. I feel like that right foot is on the outer side of the shadow circle, and this left one maybe came up from this outer side of the shadow circle, so that looks great. Now if we turn on our defender, we're obviously way out of position, especially if we look here. We're way, way out of position. So we're going to turn our defender off again, come back down to this frame, and you can see the huge, huge difference, right? And if we wanted to, this would be a good time for us to potentially turn on the grid, because we could use the grid to help us find where that foot is, and you can play with things like this to try to get the grid to line up perfectly on where that foot is, but it's not necessarily ever going to line up quite perfectly. Yeah, we're not going to get what we're trying to get here, which is the foot lining up quite perfectly. So I'm going to set this back to 30, which is the default. And I'm going to use this grid, and I actually don't even need the grid. I can kind of do this as well. I just turn this off, and now we can see, okay, that's where the foot is. What we want to do is we want to line those feet up. Because when we're stepping off that toe in real life, this foot doesn't move. We're pivoting here. So what we do is we come over here, and we go, okay, well, now that we're on our shadow, we can just use the RX and RY to move stuff. Does that look a little bit closer? Yeah, that actually looks like maybe we're in the right X position. Let's mess with our Y position a little bit, though. So back and forth. It does seem like perhaps we're not quite as over as we need to be here. And you can see how our shadow moves there. That's actually okay. We don't mind our shadow making that movement because our body makes that movement too. But we do kind of want to make sure that we're as close as we can get here. I feel like we're still over to the left a little bit. So I'm going to take that up to maybe 20. That's too much. Let's go down to 22. That looks pretty good. That looks pretty good. And I bet you if we do pull up the grid now, we'll be pretty close just looking at the... Okay, so our toe falls right on that blue line there. And if that is correct, then it should fall right on the blue line. Okay, so we actually are one off. There we go. So that's a perfect transition right there. You see how smooth that is now? That's how we can get that perfect. And then we go to our next frame, and once again, we have all kinds of problems in this frame. I'm going to turn the grid back off for a moment, and we're going to fix our X here, or our F here, because that's really, really off. So once again, we're going to try to center, and I may use that trick I showed you guys of putting the shadow dead center here so that we can ensure that our shadow's in the right place, and then work on getting our edit in the right place. So let's go plus here. You can't just hold down the right or left mouse button to get your positioning. That seems pretty perfect to me right there. We're kind of dead center on our shadow, which is great. So now we're going to go ahead and look at our previous frame and start aligning to that. And if we want here, we can go ahead and turn our grid back on. So now that we've turned our grid back on, we can see that our foot is not quite in the right place. It's pretty close, though. So if we get this right there, now we're just a little bit too low. So we want to go up a little bit. That looks pretty good. So now what we've effectively done is we're stepping, right? So if we turn this on, stomp, step. Now what you may notice is we're stepping a little far for stomping on the arm, aren't we? Aren't we a little bit too far here? Well, this is where we have to get a little creative. So how we're going to fix that, and we're actually going to turn off the separation frame here as well because we don't want that on. So the way we're gonna fix this is if we step too far, then what do we need to adjust? Well, we need to adjust this leg and let this leg guide us. And we will do that, but before we do, I wanna go ahead and get our next stomp, which is actually going to be this one, Stomp to the Face. And the reason for that is because we want the animation of that just straight up stomp. And we can start right here with the first frame, which is them kind of landing in the correct positioning. So we're gonna grab all of this again. And come down here, we're gonna copy, and then we're gonna jump over to our new stomping face right here, which for the sake of making things easier to keep track of, we're just gonna call dissection stomp B. Sure. Doesn't matter what we call it. We're also gonna go ahead and make sure that we save it so that we have it. Dissection stomp B. Okay, lovely. Now we're gonna grab those frames that we just got and we're gonna position them right at the end of the 12 frames because we don't want to overwrite any of the frames we already have, we just want to add to it. And we hit paste, beautiful. So now if we look at just our attacker animation, okay, that's not quite what we're going for, right? Like, we don't actually move here, we end up right back where we started with that next stomp. Now the good news is, because the shadow is right on that next stomp, really the only thing we need to adjust is where our feet are. So we're gonna go ahead and pick this one right here, which is our newest frame. We're just gonna move it over a little bit, try to get it kind of in the same line. Now, as you can see, this is our left foot, and this is our left foot. So we need to line those up wherever they're gonna end up. Now, what's important here is that we also need to grab our defender frames here. And the reason for that is because we need the defender to take that stomp. The defender also needs to be in the correct position. Now, what I've done here is I've actually grabbed all of these frames and we're gonna paste them over. There's other ways to do this. I do think that this is probably the best one though. So we're gonna go at 12 here and we're gonna paste. Now, as you can see, our defender actually doesn't move here, and that's really useful. 9 times out of 10 in animations, you're going to have the attacker moving and the defender's gonna stay still. As you can see, this just looks right, except for our stomp is going to the ribs. So that's not quite right. Positioning-wise, we don't want our stomp to go to the ribs, so we're going to find the first frame of this stomp that we've added, and we're going to reposition it a little bit more. The main thing here is we want that stomp to look like it's hitting them in the arm. And it's not going to look quite like it. It's going to look like he's kicking him in the stomach, right? And that's okay. But what I want you to do is I want you to imagine this arm on the other side. So we're in a pretty good spot here. We do maybe want to go over just a few frames more. So I'm going to go over like 2 more frames here, and then boom, that looks perfect, like right on the wrist, right? We're right in line with the wrist on the other side. And you might go, okay, but you're stomping him on the groin, not on the wrist. Well, there's a simple fix for that. And that is, whenever we get to these frames where we're actually impacting, we want to click on this foot, and we want to change the stack priority of it to C. And look at that, now we're behind the body and we're actually stomping his wrist. As far as anybody knows, we're stomping his wrist right here, and he is reacting to that stomp to the wrist, and that's it. Just making sure that we have C on all the right frames. So right here we have a little bit of an issue. I'm sure you can see what it is. First of all, that animation is really poor right there because the knee and the leg look disconnected, so we'll be messing with that anyway to make it look better. Way to go, Spike. And then we have this calf that's in the wrong position. We want that to be C as well because technically it should be behind that leg that's popping up. Okay, so that's fixing the position of those frames. And then the other thing we still need to work out is our transition here, right? Because this isn't perfect. Our foot is in the wrong place. If we go ahead and get rid of our defender, our left foot goes quite a distance here. Like a really, really bad distance. So what we want to do is we want to correct that. And the way that we're going to correct that is by changing the position of this foot. So we want it to land right about here, right? So if we look, that's pretty good. Pretty much right on the same spot. The problem, of course, is that now we're super, super disjointed, and our edit is taking a huge, huge walk, right? Like, that is a big, big walk. So what we're going to want to do here, we're going to want to select all of our body parts. Well, that's probably not going to be as effective as just moving the leg. So we're going to move this leg back a little bit. And we're going to move this leg a little bit. And now we can easily select the entire body because we like the entire body doing what it's doing. We just want it to be kind of over a little bit more. And obviously we will keep it on the line that it's on here if we can, but move it over a little bit more so it makes a little more sense where we're going to be positioning these feet. Now, for these legs, we're going to have some other issues that we have to deal with. Like, that is obviously not going to work, right? So instead, what we'll do is we'll take this leg and we'll swap it up for one that is smaller, but in a similar position. So we want to keep in mind where the green and the red circles are here. That's going to help us with positioning. And we want to look for a smaller leg that is in a similar position. So that would be this one, or potentially this one, or even potentially that one, but I don't feel that that one's quite right. So I think I'm going to go with this one just because it's even shorter and that makes more sense. Then we're going to rotate it a little bit. And we're going to position it as if it were behind here where we want it to be. So maybe right there. That's probably a little high, to be honest. It's probably right about there. And we can even move it forward a little bit, like he's sort of stutter stepping here. So like that. And now we've got to make this leg connect these two. Now, it's actually not a huge distance away right here. Like, that's somewhat tolerable, but it still doesn't feel quite right. So I'm going to look for a slightly smaller variant of the leg that is in a similar position, just like we did with the other piece. Let's go for maybe this one. That does look like a slightly smaller variant. Yeah, that looks pretty good already, right? So we're already pretty close to where we want to be. Maybe right there. Obviously, you could tune these forever and get way, way more accurate, but we're not trying to tune forever because this is, you know, going to be roughly an hour-long video, and we're already at 40 minutes, so I want to kind of keep going so you guys can see some of the things you can do here. So once again, here we need to shorten this leg. We're actually going to go for this one because this is the shortest variant we can get, and we're going to position it so that it, you know, makes sense and matches up. So maybe right about there. And then we're going to grab this calf, and we just need to connect this calf to where our foot's landing. And that actually looks pretty good. It looks like we're taking a very short step. Boop, 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 boom. Love it. Okay, so now if we watch it and we play it. Now there is a little bit of a weird delay there when he's making that transition. It feels like the transitionary step takes a little too long. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to find those frames and I'm going to tune the timing on them a little bit. So for those frames, we are right here. Okay, that's 8 frames right there. That's way too long. On the original animation, I think it was 6 for each, so we're going to try 6 on each of those. Yeah, that looks a lot better. Okay, so we make our transition. You notice something that's a little wonky there, though? Watch his arm. Watch his arm as he steps. His arm swings out really, really high. So we go stomp, arm is at the waist level, arm is all the way up at the head level. That's not good. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to actually adjust this arm a little bit, and that's just for continuity's sake. I don't want it to be that high up. So I'm going to go ahead and reposition this here. It's a little bit like that. Now you can do this a lot less smooth than this, right? You could make this a lot faster if you just didn't care so much about how smooth it is, and that's totally up to you. But I, like, obsess over the smoothness. That looks a little bit better. It's still kind of too high, I think. But it does follow the motion a little bit better. And now we've got 2 of our stomps, right? That's actually... I'm not gonna lie to you guys, I'm actually surprised at how much progress that is, but that is really, really nice progress right there. Boom. I love it. It looks good. So we've got 2 out of 5 joints. You'll note that we do have a second damage frame here. We have a damage frame for each stomp, which means that because of the way that this works, I'm going to want to set the damage lower because it's going to apply damage 5 times. There we go. There's my hand. 5 times. So what we want to do is we want to make sure that our damage is low enough that when it applies it, it doesn't do as much damage as a single stomp would do. And we'll probably end up changing where it does damage to, right? So a normal stomp to the face does 2 stamina damage, 1 spirit damage, and 1 neck damage. Now this is going to be a signature spot, so it's kind of okay for it to do a little bit more damage, but I think what we're going to do here is we're going to reduce it to 1 stamina, 1 spirit, one neck, one arm, and one leg. Obviously, we don't need a back damage because we're not going to kick them in the gut. We're going to kick them in the head, the arm, and the leg. And if you really, really wanted to, like, go into it, you could be like, well, you could put 2 damage because you're hitting, you know, each arm and each leg, but that's kind of overkill in my opinion. I think this is probably just fine right here damage-wise. And now we need to animate our next stomp. So we have to get from this position over to the feet. Well, how do we do that? The same way we did our last transition. We come over here, we apply this, we come right here, we apply this. We know that we want these to be about 6 frames each. So there we go. And you can see a problem already. Where's our defender at here? Well, we don't have one. So what we're going to do is we're just going to copy this last frame. And we're going to paste it twice. Okay, now we have a defender, which is good. Of course, we're going to need the defender gone so we can fix our animations here. Looks like we're actually pretty on shadow there. I mean, we are slightly off, I feel like. Yeah, we're slightly off on the Z-axis here, which is good because that's already selected. So let's go ahead and drop it down a little bit. 10 seems like it's good, but it's maybe a little much. I'm going to go for 8 here. I'm going to turn the grid off here because the grid's not actually helping in this particular situation. Maybe we come over a little bit. Well, actually, step 1, let's use our trick that we found to just line it up on the very center line here. That looks pretty good. Maybe one more there. Okay, and now we can position our shadow and see how we feel about our shadow. So I think that our Y height on the shadow here is fine, but I think that our X height is a little bit off. So let's go in just a little bit, something like that. You can also kind of think of their center of gravity. You want it to line up with that center line. That's something that can be helpful. And then we'll look at this frame as well. And this one's pretty close. Like, it really is pretty close. I think all we need to do is make some slight adjustments here. And that looks pretty good. I may bring it over just a little bit, though, because I do feel like... Uh-oh. Okay, that was a big mistake. If you click these arrows, it will add 100 or 10 or minus 100 or 10 from every single form in the animation list, so you got to be careful about that. But you can always Control Z to undo if you run into issues with that, so don't worry about it too much. So this is fine, but I want to switch this and go a little bit more negative there, just to make sure that we are kind of centered over our shadow. Okay, that looks good to me, so what we're going to be doing now is we're going to be actually making that transition. So we come up here. This is our left foot that we're going to be pivoting off, or rather our right foot that we're going to be pivoting off of. So what we need to do is we need to once again get our right feet into alignment with each other. So we're going to go ahead and move this one over quite a bit. Probably could have done 10s instead of 1s there. I honestly think that we can eyeball that one pretty good. 20 seems all right. That looks pretty good right there, but I think we overshot it ever so slightly. So now I'm going to turn the grid on just to make sure. Yeah, we overshot it ever so slightly on the X-axis, so probably right about there. Okay, that actually looks perfect now. How about that, guys? You can, once you get good at this, you can kind of eyeball it. But honestly, if you want it to be perfect like I do, then you always want to kind of check your grid here. So now we've got to reposition this one so that the foot stays in the correct location. I want to say it's like right there. Yeah, we got to go down a little bit here. Probably too much there. Yeah, still too much. Still too much. Okay, that looks good. All right, so now if we turn on our defender, let's see where we're ending up. Okay, so we're kind of ending up a little further than we'd like to be here. Like, once again, this isn't quite the position that we want to be in. So what I'm going to do here is I'm actually going to make a similar adjustment to what we did before. I'm going to grab us a little bit thinner of a leg. Maybe that one. Rather smaller, not thinner, I guess. And we're going to position that like right there. And then we're going to grab this. And while this is okay... Yeah, this is fine. This is fine. What I'm really going to be looking to change here, though, that is going to matter, is I'm going to be looking to change this foot. And the reason for that is because I need this to look like we're about to pivot on our toe. Like we're going to change direction, so I kind of want that foot. So if I put that foot right here, Like right there is probably where I want it to base out. Then we can kind of try to align this to it. But as you can see, the angle that our leg is and the angle that our boot is do not actually match. You can see because the laces don't line up. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to look for one that lines up a little better, like that one. And then I'm going to try to position that appropriately. As you can see, we have some issues here where it still doesn't quite look right. And that is a good hint that maybe you're slightly off on adjustments on other things, because you can always adjust the boot. There we go, that looks better. So now we're stepping there, and what we're going to do is we're going to try to pivot him over. So he's going to plant on that left foot, and then we're going to swap his positioning. But to do that, first what we want is we want the stomp from the arm again. And the reason we want the stomp from the arm again is just because of the positioning. We want to be using this sort of sideways stomp whenever we are on one side or the other of the body for consistency. So I'm going to grab this, and this is where things are going to get a little bit more difficult. And the reason they're going to get more difficult is because now we need to flip these frames. So we're going to paste this in. Obviously, we are way off position here. This is not anywhere near where we want to be. So what we do want to do here... Okay, this is... I'm like working through it in my head, guys, to make sure that we're doing this the right way. So we want to horizontal flip this for starters. You can see that takes us out of alignment with our shadow. And everything else is not horizontal flipped and will need to be as well. So we're going to horizontal flip every one of these frames. All the way down to the bottom. And that's going to obviously cause some issues. We're going to have to fix some things. But this is the way it works when you want to do this stuff. Okay, so now we are way, way off of our shadow here. The good news is that if you fix the shadow on the first one, it should fix the shadow on all the subsequent frames. And that's because they're all related to each other. So here we are messing with our X height. We do want to kind of bring it back a little bit like that. Maybe a little too far there. I'm going to turn our grid off again so that we can clearly see the shadow here. And then we want to mess with our FZ here a little bit to get kind of centered in our shadow. So like that. And if we go through here, okay, I guess I'm wrong. I had hoped that if we fixed it on the one frame, it would fix it on the rest. Doesn't seem to have done that. The good news is that you can usually use pretty similar settings to get there. So like this would probably be pretty close to 26. I guess not. Oof. That's definitely going to make things a little bit more interesting. So we're going to... This is actually the part that I've gotten to with this move on my own before bringing it onto the video here. So we're basically going through brand new ground right here, folks. So hang in there. We're going to be fine. Let's go ahead and switch this to FY. Bring it down a little bit. I'll bring it down a little bit more, I think. So yeah, this is where it gets kind of meticulous. Like, obviously, if you don't want to spend this much time and you just want to put something together, that's up to you. Personally, like, I'm all about that quality. Did I just move the wrong frame? I did. For me, it's all about getting that quality level there. Like, I want people to not be able to tell the difference between the moves that I make and the moves that came in the game. Actually, I want people to tell the difference between the moves that I make and the moves that came in the game, because the moves that I make look better. That's what I want. So that's what we're aiming for here. I do think that we're maybe a little bit low on our FY here. Just a little bit. So what I think, we are lined up perfectly though. So I'm going to go ahead and -2 here and also -2 here. Okay, so now we're still pretty far off from where we want to be pivoting, right? So let's look at how we can join that pivot. So I'm going to go ahead and take this. We're going to go back a whole bunch. What we want to do is we want to line up our foot with the foot on the other animation. So I'm going to go ahead and turn our grid back on here. And we're going to look here. There may actually, I'll tell you guys this much, there may actually be shortcut keys for turning the grid on and off. If that is the case, those keys would probably save you a lot of time. Okay, that's pretty close. That's closer. So now what's happened is we've stepped and we've pivoted. We've now effectively pivoted our body so that we are actually facing our defender's feet. What we do need to do here, though, is we need to go into our stomp, and this is where... Actually, this is fine. This is perfectly fine. So if we go into our Stomp here and we look at our Defender, we don't actually need to flip our Defender's body, but we also don't necessarily want to use the Stomp frames from this. And the reason why is because this is the face-down Stomp. So what I'm going to do is instead I'm going to get the frames from the leg Stomp, and we will have to make sure that those line up properly, but they should. Copy those. We're going to come down to Dissection Stomp B, and we are going to find where our Defender frames end. Right there. We're going to paste. And we'll see how that looks. See, the Defender stays in the same position. That's actually one of the things that's really nice. I'm not sure if it actually responds to the Stomp correctly. No, so the frame that it responds to the Stomp on is about a frame off. Maybe? I mean, actually, that seems pretty in line. Like, he doesn't react until the Stomp impacts, and that's fine. Obviously, we still need to fix our positioning on the rest of these frames. But as you can see, we've now pivoted over to his ankle, and from here, we can effectively Stomp that back ankle, and then we can find some frames to animate us stepping down here and Stomp that front angle. This is actually something I'm not excited about. I'm not sure what move I'm going to find the frames on for circling around the bottom side here, but that's what I'll do. I'll go find another move where they circle down the bottom side for some reason. I wonder what we could... Actually, let's take a look at that. Let's see what we can do that will do that. And I'm going to go ahead and assume that our best bet is probably opponent face down near legs. Let's just select all and see if we can find one where they kind of turn their back. The main thing we're looking for is we want our back to be facing. So here we have a frame of our back facing, but we don't actually have a frame of him stepping to the back. And what may end up happening here is I may just have to create this custom. Like, sometimes that happens, you want a specific thing to go on and there's just not an animation for it in the game already. So you just make it happen. Let's see. Still not seeing anything that quite twists the direction that we're trying to twist. Although the elevated Boston Crab has a nice, like, step over animation, maybe for clearing that corner. Falling fist drop. That's not going to do it. 5-star clutch isn't going to do it. No, no, no. And this is just, you know, kind of the difficulty of this, is trying to maybe find some base frames to work from. And what you may find is that it's just easier for you to animate it custom. Like, there are instances in which animating custom is just better. Like, they rarely have the edit turn its back. Oh, wait. There. This is a perfect animation for us to steal some transitionary frames from. I mean, this isn't perfect, right? Like, this isn't going to easily transition into what we're trying to do here, but it will allow us to round that corner to the next position when we get there. Now, obviously, we still need to fix the rest of this Stomp right here, so we can go do that. That being said, we are running low on time here, so I'll probably see about maybe finishing this last Stomp right here, and that'll be it for this episode. I do hope that it helped you guys. If you have any tips of your own that you want to leave in the comments, please do that. I think one of the greatest things that can come from these types of videos is not only can you guys learn from me, but we can learn from each other, and that's actually, in my opinion, way, way, way more valuable. Like, it's just 1,000 times more valuable for everybody to kind of share their experiences and what they've managed to learn. Okay, so here is this. If you ever notice that your camera is jittering, it's because you're slightly off shadow. Another thing to keep in mind. I'm not going to mess with this too much. Like, if we go to -14 here, it's very clear that we're off. Yeah, it's very clear that we're off. Let's go ahead and see if our shadow lines up here. It does not. So that's another trick you can use. You can try to line up your shadow with the previous frame. But it really depends, because if there's motion, then the shadow should be moving this frame, right? So right here, we're popping up in the air, though, like we should be in the same exact position. So we can safely kind of say, well, we don't want to be, you know, moving. We want our shadow to be kind of right where it was. Perfect. So now our shadow is perfect, and if you look at that, our jump is actually okay right there, too. So we're kind of in an okay position. I am curious about the height of that jump, or whether we're actually at the jump yet. Okay. So that's important. We weren't actually at the jump yet here, which means that we do need to make adjustments, because otherwise we're just going to, like, fly in the air and it's going to look really weird. Yeah, we need to make a few adjustments here. Okay, let's bring this down a little bit more. Up a little bit more, it seems. Seems about right there. Now I'm going to go ahead and make an FX adjustment here because we do want to line up, and our shadows are lined up, but our toes are not. And that actually makes me a little bit nervous because I think one thing we can determine by this is that the shadow is not perfectly centered. Like here the shadow feels centered, but we are also seeing the shadow kind of jitter here a little bit, and the camera will jitter with it. Interesting. Yeah, so we'll probably need to make some tweaks there to make that work correctly because the shadow jumps upward, and that means the camera will jump upward. So the shadow goes down right here, which is problematic. We actually don't want that. So let's see about... What's annoying is that it actually moves your edit if you use FX, FZ, so instead what we'll do is we'll use... Yeah, so see how it goes from up to down to up again? That's a problem. We can either go back down, but since we know that this is the right positioning and where we want to be, instead what we need to do is we need to move the shadows up here, which means adjusting the RY values to get those in sync. And we can't have them moving across. We do want them to move across. I'm actually going to turn the grid off here to help with this tuning issue. Okay, so we want to come up a little bit more with our shadow there, which means then we'll have to adjust our F values again, actually a little bit lower. So watch the shadow move. Doop, doop, doop. Seems good, seems good. Here, 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 and then here. Okay, that seems pretty good. It does seem like we could maybe move the shadow up just a tad bit right here. So it looks like it's transitioning a little bit more into this position. In fact, we could even go up like 1 or 2 more. Yeah, so now it's moving a lot smoother. That feels like a smooth arc that the shadow is moving. Of course, our foot positioning is now off, so we've got to make some F adjustments. But that's really what it comes down to, guys, is you're just going to be tweaking and tweaking. And how much you want to tweak comes down to your personal preference. This is legitimately why I never finish making moves right here. Because all I do is I get super into like tweaking them and trying to make them perfect. And there are definitely people in the community that are better at this, that can like tweak stuff and have it be phenomenally good. But that's not at all me. I am like super picky about my moves, but I'm also like not good enough to quickly tweak them and make them perfect. So here, I'm going to go ahead and drop our FZ a little bit. Now, it is important to remember that if you're moving vertically, like here, we're actually moving up a little bit. So while it doesn't make sense for us to move the foot up while we're pivoting, we have to consider when it does make sense for the foot to move up. So not here either. So right about... And as you can see, we've got another issue going on here where we're not actually on our shadow anymore. So the X positioning of the shadow is problematic there because the shadow is leading further than our edit is. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to fix that. But first, I want to make sure that our foot's in the right spot. It is. Okay, so that plays pretty well. Obviously, our stopping position there isn't perfect. Yeah, there's some problems with our stopping position there. And we may actually be okay having our shadow sort of as a transitionary piece there if we're going to move this one. So now we're going doot, doot, doot. Obviously there are problems with that, as in we don't land quite right here. So let's move this over to right about... And I'm just eyeballing this one so that I can do it quickly, because I'm probably going to call the video here in just a moment. Okay, so now we're way too far out. You can see the problem there, right? We're way too far away. So here, what we would want to do is we'd want to make an adjustment to this leg again, maybe change the positioning of the foot. And that's all it is, guys. It's just tweaking back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, so you get exactly what you want. So here we would want this, maybe, and then tilt it up like that a little bit. Or even do this. And that would allow us to pivot a little bit tighter here. Let's see how that plays. At the end of the day, too, it's also how it looks, right? Like, that's what really matters. Okay, so the positioning there seems okay when we walk it. Oh, no, I didn't want to move that. Remember, if you ever accidentally move something, you can undo with Control-Z, so boop, boop. We're still a little too far out here. We need to be closer. I honestly think that the answer might be to cut one of these frames, or to, like, reduce the amount that this frame juts over here a little bit. That could be a big part of it, too, like if we brought this foot down. So anyways, that's really what it comes down to. Like, I could tune this move forever to make it better. But we're getting somewhere. We've got part of a dissection stomp going here. We've managed to make a couple simple splice moves there. I hope that you guys found this video helpful. If you have any questions, go ahead and leave them in the comments. If you're looking for feedback, check out firepro2.com. That is the hottest Fire Pro community on the internet, and I'm not just saying that because I'm part of the team. There are some amazing creators there that can help you out. Bozo-sama is one of the most prolific creators of just amazingly well-animated, solid moves. So if anybody can provide you with some useful feedback of when you need to make a change or when you're being crazy like me and just changing everything because you're crazy, it's Bozo-sama, amongst the tons of other great creators there. In fact, I'm seeing new creators there all the time that are actually really, really good, and that's super nice to see. So check it out if you haven't, and I will see you guys next time. Thank you guys for watching. I hope you enjoyed the show. If you did, make sure to go ahead and give us a like or subscribe to the channel, and we will see you next time. Bye!